if we do nothing, the tumor is going to cause those problems on its own.
Will that eventually kill him?
Worst case scenario is this is a grade 4 brain tumor. Okay? And yes, that tumor would eventually take your life.
I was diagnosed with GBM in 2007, early 2007. I've only had a couple of issues, couple of seizures, but other than that, I have been doing wonderful.
Glioblastoma. It's a diagnosis that I never heard of prior to October of 2015, when my mother was diagnosed with it. It is also known as the Terminator in the medical community. It is the most aggressive form of brain cancer, killing its victims on the average of 14 months from diagnosis. By year 5, 95% of the people diagnosed with glioblastoma would have passed away. There are long-term survivors, but they're extremely rare. The time I had with her was actually a lot less, as this diagnosis is an assault on the victim's personhood. My mother was given a year to live, but we lost her only a few months in. I witnessed her being destroyed piece by piece. It was the hardest thing I had ever had to endure. Of course, I'm not alone in this experience. Every 45 minutes, a new family is selected for the glioblastoma experience. And this is downright disturbing, knowing that so many others have to endure this.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Bollinger. I'm 38 years old. On January 30th, my 37-year-old husband, Chet, started developing vertigo symptoms. After about 3 weeks, we finally did an MRI, and they found 2 tumors on his brain.
Hi, my name is Josh Guzman. My mom, Edith, passed away last June after being diagnosed with glioblastoma the year prior in May of 2014.
My name is Amanda Reyes, and my husband Randy was a glioblastoma warrior. I was his caregiver. He was diagnosed in 2013, and after a 1.5-year battle, he died in 2014.
Hello everyone, my name is Angie. I am from Mexico. I used to be a caregiver along with my dad and my brother. My mom is the one who got sick. She got brain cancer, or specifically glioblastoma.
My name is Lisa Scheinkoff, and I was the caregiver to my daughter Jennifer Scheinkoff, who had glioblastoma from December of 2006 until August of 2014. Jen was born on August 24th, 1981, and she passed away just shy of her 33rd birthday.
My husband and I checked into Barrow's Neurological Institute, where they removed a mass in the 4th ventricle. They removed 98% of it, and there was another mass in his thalamus that's inoperable. A 4 to 6 hour surgery turned into a 14-hour surgery. When he got out of surgery, he was in the intensive care, critical care unit of the hospital on a breathing machine for 2 days. Spent 9 days in the ICU. When he woke up from being sedated, he couldn't see. He didn't know where he was. He was very confused. I didn't realize that on February 27th, 2015, when I said, "I love you." And I said goodbye to him as they wheeled him off to surgery. It was truly the last time that I was ever going to see that Chester again.
The diagnosis came as a shock, of course, as I'm sure it does with many. She was diagnosed with migraines a few years back, so she constantly had headaches. My dad had passed away in March of 2013 from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and during that time, probably his last 6 to 8 months, she just was not herself at all, and the family attributed it to the fact that, well, she's losing her husband. And she went through periods of, she just wasn't herself. She was never one to be a angry, temperamental person, and that's who she became. She wasn't at all patient with my dad. She didn't want family around to visit my dad. Even her kids at times, weren't always the most welcomed. So when we found out her diagnosis, everything began to make sense. What led us to her finally getting to a doctor to be seen and, digging deeper than this is more than migraines was frequent falls. In conversation with her, she would just trail off onto subjects that were unrelated, things didn't make sense. So that was a big tip off to myself and my siblings that, there's something more going on here. And I'll never forget the day she was diagnosed. It was May of 2015. We were in a hospital room on a Saturday morning, and doctor had come in after they had done a brain scan and pretty much told us there was no easy way to break the news, so he just came out and said that she had an inoperable glioblastoma brain tumor.
He was diagnosed after he had an MRI, which was ordered by his primary care physician, and I found out about the diagnosis when I came home from work, and he was standing there looking very serious, and I said, "What happened? What did the MRI show?" And he said, "Bad news, it's a brain tumor." His primary care physician then called, and he handed me the phone, and she started to give me names, dates of doctors, parking locations, clinics, telling me to take down information. She was so sorry, it was a glioma. So my initial reaction was confusion because I didn't know why she was so sorry and what is a glioma because she didn't explain it. And then I was angry because I got too much information given to me within 5 minutes. And my husband's initial reaction to the prognosis was extreme fear. He was so afraid because they ordered surgery within 3 days that I think he thought he was going to die during the surgery, and he called up all his family and friends, and he was crying. He cried himself to sleep for a couple nights, and this is a tough guy who never shows any emotion, and he was just devastated.
The first signs I remember very well that day. It was a regular day in our life, and she called me, and she told me that she felt weird, that she felt like something has happened to her, but she couldn't explain what she felt. So she said she forgot how to call my dad, and fortunately she could call me. And as she was speaking, I noticed that her sentences didn't make sense, and she was mixing the last words. So I asked her, "Mom, are you okay? What happened to you?" And she couldn't answer correctly. I mean, I asked her, "Mom, what's your name? Tell me you're okay," and she couldn't answer.
Jennifer had a headache for several weeks. It didn't stop. It just kept getting worse. It was so bad at one point that she brought herself to an urgent care center. She and Kyle were living in Tucson at the time, back in late 2006. When she went to the urgent care center, her being a 24-year-old young, healthy woman, they didn't even think about possibility of brain tumor, and they just said, "Well, you have any stress going on in your life?" And she said, "Of course, doesn't everybody?" And they said, "Okay, well, here, take some super Tylenol and go get some rest, and you should be okay." She wasn't okay. The headache kept getting worse to the point where she was in so much pain that a few weeks later, when Rachel was visiting Jen and Kyle for her winter break from school, Jen was laying on the floor in their bathroom, puking and writhing in pain. Rachel and Kyle then brought Jennifer to a local hospital down there, where in the emergency room they took a CT scan and found a very sizable mass in the left frontal lobe of her brain.
On March 10th, 2015, pathology came back, grade 4 glioblastoma. My 4 children and I were shattered. I have 4 boys, ages 8, 6, 4, and 4 months. My husband is practically using a walker and wheelchair all the time, where before he used to go to the gym 5 days a week. He used to play softball. Anything and everything sports related he did, including coaching my 4-year-old son's t-ball team.
Over the course of the next year, learned very quickly how devastating this disease is. Upon diagnosis, we sought out all of our options. My mom had said, after seeing what my dad had went through with chemo and radiation and everything, that she never would want to go that route. But I think facing the diagnosis gave her a different perspective. She chose to take treatment. There was a bit of a disagreement between myself and my siblings. They wanted her immediately, take the treatment. Myself, in my readings, my research, she was diagnosed at stage 4. I wanted her to have more quality than quantity of life, because as bad as the doctors told us that it was, I didn't want things to be any harder on her than it needed to be.
He had the surgery, and the gold standard of treatment is dexamethasone, which is a steroid, and then you have Temodar, which is chemotherapy in a pill form, and then you have radiation. So he had all of these, and the dexamethasone caused a lot of roid rage. It was necessary and he needed it, but it had to be controlled because it did cause a lot of side effects. If I had to do it over again, if it was me, or if I had to do it again for my husband, I would pass on the radiation because it caused more harm than good. It may work for other people, but it just wasn't useful for us.
He has undergone 3 brain surgeries, 1 craniotomy, 1 shunt placement, a shunt revision, as well as implanting an Amaya reservoir, which is a bubble underneath the skin of the brain where you inject directly intrathecal methotrexate chemotherapy. We do that twice a week, drive 40 minutes each way to the hospital to get that done. He's also doing his Temodar, which is his monthly maintenance chemo, 5 days a week, every month. We know the outcome of glioblastoma. It's heartbreaking. My children will grow up with memories of their daddy, but only through me, only through pictures.
I want to stress the fact that my mom was 62 years old, and she had always been so healthy. She loved sports. She was such an active woman, and she always had a lot of energy. So this was a big hit on us. That day, the day of the first signs, my dad took her to the ER, and they made a tomography, and they found a tumor. This was like such a bad news, and we didn't know what to expect with a tumor. We didn't know a tumor could cause all these signs, because my mom was out of her world. She was so confused. She didn't understand anything. So 2 days later, she had surgery, and the doctor came out and said that there was a big chance my mom lose her speaking. Fortunately, that didn't happen. My mom had a very good life for almost 10 months, you could see her and you couldn't tell at all that she had some disease going on with her.
After the surgery, we did our homework and we did our research, and so we were prepared for the worst. The team at Barrows really wanted to make sure that they had the right diagnosis, and so they called 2 tumor boards to review her file and to make sure that they were really sure with the news that they were about to give us. And on January 9th, Jennifer and Kyle and Danny and Rachel and I all sat in an office with the neurosurgeon, the neuro-oncologist who really became her major advocate and source of care for the ensuing 7+ years, neuroradiologist, and that was the team. They met with us and they reviewed her file with us, and they told us that in fact she did have glioblastoma. They explained the treatment that she was going to have, but most importantly, the attitude that they took with Jen and with us really helped set the stage for a very hopeful and about as positive approach as I think there can be. They said, look, the statistics are the statistics. You looked them up. We all know them. If you need us to say the words, we'll say the words. And they did. Right? They reviewed the fact that the vast majority of patients get a recurrence within 6 months and don't live beyond 1.5 years. They said, but you're not a statistic. Statistics happen afterward. They don't happen beforehand. You're young. You have had a full resection. The technology keeps advancing, and we are in this to help you live and to help you beat this thing. We're not in this to predict when you're going to die.
My husband had 4 craniotomies because they went in 4 times to try to get more tumor out because it kept regrowing. After the 3rd craniotomy, they offered him Avastin infusions. Avastin is a targeted therapy in drip form, which cost us, with our insurance, not everybody, but our insurance, it cost over $25,000 a treatment. He did go for the Avastin, and you get that every 3 or 4 weeks, and it did add about 5 months to his life. He didn't have that many side effects, so I would recommend anyone who's offered Avastin to try it. And the dexamethasone caused so many side effects that you really need to keep an eye on it. What we didn't know is that one of the side effects from glioblastoma are pulmonary embolisms. My husband had pain in his legs, and no one told him what it was or what to look out for. And apparently the blood clots went to his lungs, and he couldn't breathe. He had trouble breathing, so they finally diagnosed that he had a gigantic pulmonary embolism and almost died from that. So I would recommend that people keep an eye out for that. That's supposedly a common side effect for GBM.
So they started with radiation treatment. From that, they went to Timidor, and she went probably for the first 1.5, 2 months of the combined treatments where she had no side effects whatsoever, and then suddenly one day, every possible side effect she could have, she had, and she had it in the worst way. So at that point, she decided that she didn't want to continue with treatment, and it was a decision that we all supported, and she then went into hospice care and spent her final 8 months or so in hospice care, and probably the final 6 months were the most excruciating on the family because she was seemingly lifeless.
So Jen went through, after the surgery, of course, the standard radiation of 6 weeks along with the Timidor. After that, she made the decision to go on a clinical trial, and the trial was to test the a very high dosage of Temodar to see what the effects would be of a much higher dosage of Temodar than the standard. Instead of 5 days on and 23 days off, she was 23 days, I think she was 28 days on and 7 days off, something like that, or 23 days on and 5 off. And it was a much higher dosage. She didn't tolerate it well at all. She ended up with H. pylori infection. She ended up with other illnesses that were clearly effects of the Temodar. She had extremely low platelet counts, low white cell counts. Her pancreas got infected. She needed to be on a feeding tube for a while. So after a while, it was very clear she just couldn't handle this, and she stopped being on the clinical trial. We later learned that trial had been stopped altogether because most of the patients reacted in similar ways that Jennifer did. It was just too high of a dosage to be safe. So she completed ultimately 12 rounds of Temodar, and those 12 rounds included the rounds that she did while she was on the trial. And then Dr. Shapiro recommended that she stop the Temodar. It was clearly working because nothing was coming back. She had all clear scans from right after surgery. And he suggested that she stop the Temodar and reserve that as a weapon should the tumor come back.
The loss of my warrior husband has changed me forever. My life will never be the same. Our life was planning for retirement, and GBM commonly hits people in their 50s. Now, it does hit younger people and it does hit older people, but on the average, a lot of people in their 50s. And we had planned for retirement, and that was all cut short. Our hopes and dreams ended. They say it's like having your arm cut off when you lose your spouse. The arm gets cut off, it heals, you adapt, and you go on, and you go back to work again, and you laugh again, and you even love again, but you never are the same person. You never get better. You're changed forever. The effect that this has had on me, actually in a positive way, is it changed my outlook, because I've taken care of 3 dying family members. And what you learn as the patient is transitioning to the other side is that material things don't mean anything to them. Like they say, you can't take it with you. They're not laying there dying saying, hey, how's my car doing and my jewelry? They're saying, I want to talk to my friends. I want to see my family or my grandchildren. I value things differently now, which is a good thing, because I value experiences rather than things. Valuing time spent with people and fun things is something that I've learned, rather than valuing how many toys you have and what kind of a house you live in and so forth. Very important lesson to learn.
Probably 5 to 6 months prior to her passing, she would be awake for maybe just long enough to take a couple of bites of food to see that family was there with her, and that was pretty much it. The last 4 months probably were, she was lifeless.
She went with scans every few months and ultimately spread out to every 6 months, and they were always clear until September of 2013. So if you think about it, she all through 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 11, 12, 13, 7 years, she was clear scans. And in September of 2013, the beast came back, and it was caught in one of her regular 6-month MRIs. It was still small, but it was clear that it was back. she did another resection at that time, and the team concluded that it would be okay for her to get another bout of radiation. So she basically had the same protocol after the second tumor because it had been a long time since the first one. There was less radiation, but it was still radiation every day for 3 weeks, accompanied by Temodar every day. And then when that stopped, a month later, they took another scan, and lo and behold, it came back.
And it was beyond difficult to see her in that state. And when she did finally pass, it was something that you try to brace yourself for as you watch your loved one in that position. And
well, it has affected us in every way you can imagine. This affects your brain, which is your computer, your center. It affects your emotions. My mom lost a lot of her abilities, her reading, her speaking, her muscle strength, her memory, her reading, her vision, her writing. It was a lot. It was a lot to handle.
In January of 2014, then, Jen had another surgery. It wasn't a resection. It was a relatively new version of laser surgery that Dr. Smith, one of the neurosurgeons at Barrows, had a lot of experience with. So he went in and zapped that tumor out. It looked like the whole thing was out. And then a month later, the post-surgery scan, showed that it was coming back again. So obviously her recurrence was much more aggressive than her first 7 years. So after that, she said no more surgeries. And she went on Avastin and CCNU, went through a few rounds of that, but it didn't help. So in May of 2014, Jen decided to stop all treatment, and she was with us until August. And it was a rough time for all of us. We did our best to make good memories. In fact, our best friends put together a collection and raised a bunch of money so that Jen and Kyle could go take a vacation, and they went to Vegas together and had a really nice time. We had lots of family and friends come in to visit, and as she began to come apart, we all watched her as she made her way towards her death.
Family was there with her, and that was pretty much it. The last 4 months probably she was lifeless, and it was beyond difficult to see her in that state. And when she did finally pass, it was something that you try to brace yourself for as you watch your loved one in that position, and you see that there's no life there, and you don't know what pain they're feeling, what they're it's devastating is the only way I can explain it.
Jen waited to die until Kyle and Rachel had both left the room. Kyle and Jen moved back here from Seattle after the recurrence, and we set up a room for them. What used to be my office became their room. It's detached from the house next to the garage, so they were able to have some privacy. But finally, when it came to be the time for her to die, Kyle and Rachel happened to be outside. They just couldn't take it anymore. We were all sitting the vigil with her, and they had left the room, and Danny and I laid down next to Jen and held her in our arms and told her it was okay, that she could go, that we were going to look after Kyle and make sure that Rach would be okay, and that we were the ones who brought her into this world. So she could trust us to help her leave it too. We thought it was our job to do that as well. And with that, she took her last breaths. It was pouring rain out. Pouring rain. And I think that's because Jennifer loved the rain. Loved to dance in the rain. She would be the first kid outside when it was raining, so she'd go play in the raindrops. I'll never forget that night. It was one of the most important jobs I've ever done. And I tell you that just because I think that goes with the question of what was her biggest concern, because I really do think she waited for Kyle and Rach to be out of her sight. She didn't want to die in front of them. She knew they wouldn't be able to handle that. Anyways, I think that's the end of your questions, BamBam. Thanks for doing all this, for bringing awareness to the world, and for the opportunity to honor the memory of my amazing daughter. Thank you.
We need more funding. We need more research. We need to bring awareness to brain cancer. We need to bring awareness to all the cancers that are out there. We need to save lives. There's no reason why me, as a 38-year-old woman, should be planning my husband's funeral at 38 years old. He's a good man. He provided for us, and now he no longer can. I've turned from wife and mother to caregiver, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Please help us find a cure.